All right, welcome to the Soccer Hour on KMBR 1050, brought to you by your NorCal Honda dealers. We've got joining us my broadcast partner for now. We're about to be entering year number 10, and it is Earthquakes Hall of Famer Joe Cannon. I thought I said Hall of Famer incorrectly. Earthquakes Hall of Famer Joe Cannon. Say a little more chutzpah. Joe, what's going on, man? Happy holidays. How are you doing?
Hap- Happy holidays to you. Happy holidays to the Ramies. Doing great. That time of year, a little lower low key, and but obviously coming off of what will probably be the only Winter World Cup we'll ever see, but hopefully not. It was great, but
It,
yeah. Hi to your audience as well, Ted.
Thank you, Joe. They appreciate that. And yeah, just on the World Cup, man, me and you, Joe, growing up in the Bay Area, we've seen a lot of great sports. We've seen the 49ers, we've seen Steph Curry, the Giants had their run. We've seen great Sharks teams. We've obviously seen great Earthquakes teams, and we watch all sorts of great sports. But like when I start thinking about all-time sporting events, just all of them, Olympics, collegiate, whatever, like that World Cup final is one of the great games in the history of sports. It's like, to me, like at least in our lifetimes, like that to me, like there was so much hype going into it. Messi versus Mbappe, France versus Argentina. And not only did it live up to the hype, it exceeded it, in my opinion. Like I truly think that's one of the greatest sporting events we'll ever see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I can think of in my lifetime some Game Seven finals of the NBA, whether it's Magic and Larry
Mm-hmm.
Bird, Steph Curry and LeBron. You name it. We've been very fortunate, especially being Bay Area fans. The catch,
Yeah.
things like that, iconic moments. The World Cup though was awesome. It was, I think, what really makes these events just bigger now is just the social media, the power behind how viral things can get and how quickly. And for me, as a huge soccer fan and a huge Lionel Messi fan, just a culmination of a really incredible career of someone that's just given so much to the sport.
The thing with me was like Messi didn't need it. I'm not even a big fan of the argument of greatest of all time, because I am a big believer of you can only be compared against your era, because rules change, tactics change, the game changes, whatever the sport is. However, it is pretty hard to deny everything that Messi has done up to this point for him to lay claim to being the greatest of all time. And I don't even think he's the one, making that claim. It's everybody else. But if you look at the awards and the trophies and the World Cup and the metrics like that, like Joe, last year at Copa, as the 34-year-old, he was by all the metrics the best player in the tournament without question. And then all those metrics now at age 35 in the World Cup are once again just showing how dominant he was. I mean, I think of that one pass he made, I believe it was in the semifinal, where the entire play is going this way. And I don't know how, but he threads a needle on the sharpest angle going the opposite direction. And then on the second goal that Argentina scored in the World Cup final, he had one touch that really sprung the second goal that got them going. I mean, he does stuff that's just legit stupid. And I'm not trying to take away from Mbappe or any other play, but it's like you watch it and you think no one else out there is even conceiving of trying these things, and he's making them happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to correct you on a few points there, but I will say I think you need to take more of a stronger opinion on these things. Though, if you look at you're all shaved up now. You look brilliant for TV. Now the last part of it, I think, Ted, is just making these really strong opinions about who the best in an era is, because people want to debate. People for some reason just like to compare and contrast. I agree with you. There's no need in creating drama around it, but for me, just growing up watching Barcelona play, watching Lionel Messi play, someone, whether it was through, his time with Pep Guardiola and then seeing
Mhm.
him on, and then now with the selection in Argentina, watching a lot of the documentaries, it's really just an incredible story. And I think, he just transcends the sport. You're right. There's just so many moments, whether he's producing the goals, assisting. And I think that's what soccer purists really love about Lionel Messi is it's not just the goals he scores, but it's the goal chances he creates. It's kind of like having a Michael Jordan and a Magic Johnson combined, if you will. It's just someone that can at times take over a game and be so dominant, but at other times just be that magic, person to kind of let his teammates flourish.
Mhm.
And I think that's really, whether the media or his teammates have created, that's Lionel Messi. I mean, it's just someone that has really done no wrong in terms of, I mean, you can argue that's not the case either, but in the public's eye, it's almost like Cristiano Ronaldo is this selfish player, and here's Lionel Messi, this wholesome guy that also assists. It's almost unfair to Ronaldo. But to your point, does the World Cup matter? I actually think now, looking at everything it means to him and the country of Argentina, it totally does. I think this totally cements his history. I think these moments and athletes' moments are really, it's not just about on the field, it's about the memories you produce for the people that follow you. For me, it was a guy like Tony Armas who hit a home run in a random Oakland A's game, and I thought Tony Armas was the best baseball player in the world, after Dave Winfield, of course, because I was a Yankee fan. But I just think these memories now are just exponentially impactful of society simply because of social media, and that's why you see all of this huge adulation for what I think is game's best player in Lionel Messi.
When you were watching France come back with Mbappe scoring, 2 goals, especially that second goal, which was just unbelievable, golazo, and then in extra time you get Messi with the poacher's goal, and then you get another chance from the spot for France. I mean, what were you thinking? Because I mean, to me, I was like, this is Ali Frazier. I was like, this is 2 heavyweights, arguably the 2 greatest in the games right now. I was like, and they are literally going back and forth, because that game, as it got deeper and deeper, usually when you get into extra time, the action slows down. It opened up. It was like Stanley Cup playoff hockey, just back and forth. Every time down, you thought there was going to be an incredible scoring opportunity. And maybe the most overlooked part, and I will focus on you, the goalie, maybe the greatest kick save in the history of the sport, which probably is being overlooked. I mean, just like you said, the moments, the memories, the amount that game produced. I mean, just what were you thinking?
Yeah, I agree with you on a lot of those fronts. For me, I wasn't thinking about, the game itself. I'm such a huge Lionel Messi fan. I was just thinking how unfair this is. He has the golden boot. He has this moment of winning the goal, the World Cup winning goal. And then Mbappe, France gets a penalty kick, and rightfully so. And, enough hasn't been said about the job that the Polish referee did. A great game. I think he got the major calls right. And I think a lot of people kind of forget that part. I think referees in general, this day and age, they don't get enough accolades and, really respect in terms of just, how much they mean to the game. But it does mean something. And I think it was one of the reasons why the game finished the way it did. And I was just thinking how unfair this is to Lionel Messi. I was questioning my faith. I just thought, man, the legacy of this guy is hanging on a thread. How does a team like Argentina give up a goal, not once, but twice with 10 minutes to go in a World Cup final, when other teams like Morocco can give up no goals in 90 minutes? I mean, I don't know. I was asking a lot of questions, and you're right. The game got better. It was like, I'm not going to say a wine because it's not 100 years old, but it was almost like a good beer, I guess. I think you just hit the right temperature as it kept going. And I honestly, I don't know if I really want to replay that game just because of all the emotions that came with it. But, I think the way it transpired, because the first 75 minutes, it was almost too straightforward. 2-0. Argentina has it in the bag. They're going home. This is Messi. You're thinking about Messi's parade. And
yeah,
I knew something was going to happen. I was looking at someone that was relaxed in the crowd, and I was going to just asking myself, at what point does this person get stressed? Do I get stressed? And sure enough, Mbappe just comes through, gets fouled. Otamendi has a bad decision and makes a defensive mistake. And, credit to France. What a great team. And it seems like they're going to be a great team for the ages. I mean, it's something that, I think a lot of pundits and a lot of soccer purists really focused on is just the depth of France to be able to be there without 3 of their best players.
Yeah.
That couldn't even be on the pitch. And so,
but
and
they
it
were
seems
still
to me,
loaded.
though,
Like
absolutely. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, any team that leaves it, Angola, Conte, you've got Benzema who won the Ballon d'Or.
yeah.
It was just, it's just hard. You cannot believe and fathom a team losing those pieces. But full credit to that country. But like I said, Lionel Messi fan, incredible game. I was just thinking how unfair this is, but you're right. I think because of the way everything played out, it will go down as one of, if not the best World Cup games ever.
Yeah, I mean, just it was fun. Like that's the thing is like as much as I was emotionally invested because I felt like there was so much on the line for Messi more than I hate to cite my own tweets, but I said there has never been an athlete entering any competition who's had as much pressure as Messi did entering this World Cup because he knew that if he won it, that it would forever change his legacy in the minds of everyone. Like there'd be no denying his status, on the Mount Rushmore at the very least. But at the same time, if he didn't, then there'd be all these people who would be doubting him and saying that, oh, he couldn't get it done. And, it's not fair, obviously, because I would have put him up
Yeah.
there regardless. But I mean, it's an incredible amount of pressure. And he was the best player in the tournament. I understand that Mbappe had the golden boot, but at the same time, everything Messi did in that tournament, I mean, there's never been more pressure on an athlete, maybe ever. And he excelled.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's 35.
Yeah.
Like it just, to try and put it all in perspective, it's wild, man. It's absolutely wild.
Yeah. My favorite stat was the walking one. He was walking the most for 90 minutes, turning. And so, people claim to as experts and as Americans, you're like so blue collar focused and everyone has to work hard. And so it's hard, but just goes to show you how smart of a player is, how the tactics Luis Scaloni got right for the Argentinian head coach. I think and honestly, if you watch Argentina and you get to know the squad itself, how much as a group they were really fighting for Lionel Messi. It wasn't just this individual that was just his moment. It was a team of just incredible athletes and not only fighting for their country, but fighting for him as well to get to that moment. It's a real crazy story and excited to see the stories that come out of this as we move further.
What do you think changed that allowed France to suddenly get something going on offense? Because for the first 65, 70 minutes of that game, Argentina had them pinned in their own end. I mean, they were dominating. France looked like they couldn't do anything. And then all of a sudden they could. They had a couple runs and then it led to the first penalty. But how did they suddenly figure out how to break that? Because it wasn't working up to that point.
I just think Otamendi screws up. It's a really interesting ball. It just comes off of a clearance in French. Mbappe is stretched out, flicks the ball on, and Otamendi I think I can't remember who ran onto it, but he just hesitates. He needs to head that ball out. He lets it bounce. Then he's in between. The attacker gets in front of him, and then he hacks him. And I think, soccer at this level is just about moments, and that was just a moment that changed the game. Goals change games, and so once France got the penalty kick, got scored, and it just seemed like the tides had turned. And Argentina, 2-0 leads. This is in a World Cup. They're not their friend. I mean, everyone says it's the most dangerous lead. I hate that saying because show me somebody with a 1-0 lead that wouldn't want a 2-0 lead, but I just think it's crazy because that's what happened to them at the World Cup in '86. The last time they won it with Diego Maradona, they were up 2-0 against West Germany, and West Germany scored 2 goals right after that. And then same thing with the Netherlands a couple of rounds earlier. And man, shocked to see such a collapse. And they were very fortunate. To your credit, Emi Martinez was an incredible foot save. And you talk about foot saves, I can't think the other guy in our time, Iker Casillas, Arjen Robben had a breakaway in 2010 when the Dutch played against Spain. And that was a huge one-on-one save, but it didn't come in the 22nd minute of injury time, right at the end where it would have sewn up the game and everything was hanging on a string, a 3-3 thriller. So just an amazing, amazing game.
Let's switch to the Americans. I know there has been all sorts of contention of, whether or not, the whole situation with Gio Reyna, which just from an outsider's perspective, I got to say it's pretty weird for a coach to tell a player he's not going to be used much heading into a tournament. Like as a person, I understand why that would deject a player. As a professional, you still got to practice hard for the sake of your teammates. Why would Berhalter do that? And then why would he talk about it and assume it wouldn't leak? I is he new to this? I mean, this everything leaks.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me internally it really wasn't an issue, and I think every team, no matter who you are after the World Cup, does a post-mortem, and there's always drama around it. And I really think this, like, if Tim Ream, says it's a non-issue and he's in the fray there, and I don't think it's much of an issue. Why Berhalter alluded to it, I'm not sure. I think, he's probably, from my understanding, was at an intimate gathering, a very private, where, people probably want a little bit more insider information, and he's probably giving it to them. But, there could be a lot of reasons for it. You don't know. I mean, setting expectations with players is really important. And, the last thing you want to do is have someone that's very pouty on the bench, that doesn't
Mhm.
understand their role, and you can look at it both ways. And, some people react to those things differently. I don't know what happened exactly. So you really can't judge from the outside. I think as fans, we are left to really try to make opinions and try to fill in the gaps. But I'll tell you, there's two people that know the truth. And normally if someone says something and the other says something, it's somewhere in the middle.
Christian Pulisic, in terms of American soccer players, not named Landon Donovan, has faced a tremendous amount of pressure, is being hailed as the golden boy for American soccer. And I thought he was huge throughout the entire tournament. I mean, if he had scored on that early strike against the Netherlands, you don't know how the complexion of that game changes. And the Netherlands, I don't want to take anything away from them, but if it could go their way, it did go their way in that game against the U.S. But Pulisic, man, a lot of pressure on him. And he was on most games against England, for instance, the best player on the pitch. I'm just like, the joke was, I'm sure that, Chelsea fans were like, where is this? Like, why isn't he doing this for us?
Well, I think, if you go back just even to COVID and just a little after the pandemic, the Christian Pulisic they remember was lighting it up. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of how he stayed there. I think, I would have, in general, just like to see more firepower from the Americans. 3 goals, and really, it's in 4 games. It's not, for me, kind of what we thought. And I really think, we have an incredible midfield, and I think that was the big concern going into the tournament, was trying to find a striker that could help us to get hot at the right time. I think
Mhm.
there'll be a lot more analysis on, whether it was Josh Sargent, whether a guy like Ricardo Pepi could have came in there, could
Yeah.
Arena. But, all of that stuff to me is just, like I said, it's a post-mortem. The coaching staff goes with, the group that they feels is not only going to get the best out of them on the field, but they have to pick a group that gets along off the field. And, I think in some ways it's a successful World Cup. I think you got to the second round and you had to get out of a group. Playing against the Netherlands, I think it was a tough draw, but at the same time, I don't know. I think, I thought the Dutch played really smart. I think they knew exactly what they were doing. And, these types of games, as I mentioned before, are really, the difference is just moments. And, I thought the finishing in both boxes, that was the difference.
Yeah.
The Dutch had a few sniffs. They put their chances away. We did not. Yes, it looked like we controlled the ball, but I think, if you go back and you talk and you look in the tactical analysis of these games, it's really about teams letting others have the ball in places that they don't mind. I think that was something that came out of this World Cup. It was the first time where they thought teams not in possession, were getting more results than they had in the past. And
Mhm.
they they chalk that up to maybe a tactical nuance or understanding of this new wave of coaches. I don't know if I buy into that. I think what people aren't saying is that, it was a really small window for teams to get ready for the World Cup. So I think when that happens, it's just really, really hard to get on all cylinders, to produce special moments, to get your offense clicking without exhibition games, without trying to build relationships, outside of training. So But yeah, I mean, a good performance from the U.S. I think the next step is who will be at the helm for the next 4 years as we host the cup. And man, I'm already starting to get excited. And this is one of the best things about Qatar and the winter is that we're only 3.5 years away, not
Yeah.
4. So it's coming right away.
Do you think it's a bad thing that the U.S. doesn't have to worry about qualification? Because you're not playing in as many big games. I mean, I know that there's going to be other tournaments, but I feel like that's relatively, it's not a bad thing. We shouldn't have trouble qualifying in the first place. B, it's also good to have those qualification games, but at the same time, maybe that takes some of the pressure off. I don't know. How are you viewing it?
I think it really depends on how they fill that void with the games of qualification. I think the World Cup's going to expand, so I don't think that it would have been as pressure laden as we have known it to be with the Hex. I don't think we're going to be worried like we have ever in the past about qualification, simply because the way CONCACAF is, there's some sharks and minnows, and right now we're a shark with Mexico. I'd say Canada as well, and but it's for me, it's really depending on what we do in these off seasons. Do we try to find a Gold Cup? Do we try to get into the South American equivalent of that?
Mhm.
Do we try to get better competition in these meantime? The Nations League is trying to do that, but
Yeah.
really, it's about how to fill the void. And I think the most important thing is just getting these players playing at higher levels. You saw, I mean, guys like Weah, Adams. I mean, these guys will be household names for the U.S. For a long time. Weston McKennie. I think the spots that we really need to work on is probably, can we find a center back or two in the next 4 years, and a center forward. I think we feel like we've got a really strong midfield. I think we're fairly strong on the flanks,
Mhm.
but having those central positions, having guys that can really not just be good but great in big games is really important if we want to make it far in 2026.
In terms of the coaching question, there's a lot of people out there who believe in one coach, one cycle. And I listen, I'm not the biggest Berhalter supporter in the world, but at the same time, I don't know that I hate the idea of him sticking around for another cycle, because I look at some other programs that have had coaches around for a while and they're doing pretty well. That said, success allows coaches to hang around, which is always part of it. Where do you fall on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in your boat. I think, the answer is really, I want to know what Weston McKennie, what Tyler Adams, what Christian Pulisic, what do they feel about, the head coaching position? How is that relationship? How is that group? I think the one thing Greg Berhalter does is stress a group dynamic, and he puts a premium, just like any head coach should, on the group getting along. He was involved with some successful national teams as well, and he's seen it done. He's been in Major League Soccer where he's seen groups kind of come together and be bigger than one. And I think the one thing, I think people, if they're looking at Berhalter's resume, is they'd like to see a little bit more shine,
Mhm.
specifically at the European level or the international level. But for me, I think whoever the players are comfortable with, whoever they really want to fight for, I think the group's done a good job for the most part, bringing in and identifying the top U.S. talent. Um, you know, have they made the wrong choice once or twice? Probably. I don't know, but everyone is going to, unless you win the World Cup, you're always going to be questioned no matter where you stop. So for me, that answer is going to come down to who these core players really want to fight for and how they felt the camp went, and you know how they feel. If they think that Greg's voice is something they want to listen to for the next 4 years, and a guy that can get this group going in that direction, then by all means, let's get behind him.
That said, if we had tried to predict what the team would have been 4 years ago, we would have been way off in terms of who was populating the squad, right? I mean, you can only prognosticate so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different time, right? I think
Yeah.
that the team now is a lot younger. I think back then, it was mostly a Grizzly veteran team that Bruce Arena put on in Trinidad, and guys that were kind of coming at the end. And we didn't even qualify. So we didn't even get, we knew Christian Pulisic was going to be there. And, I think you could look at the other players, but you're right. It's the beauty about sport in general is just, time and, who knows who watched this World Cup and all of a sudden has a new dream and a new goal. And, whether they're 16 or 17, whether they're 22 or 23, and they were pissed off that they weren't a part of it, but they now have teammates that were, and they know guys that were, and they've looked over and said, why can't that be me? And
Yeah.
you don't know what that does. And I have friends that played in World Cups, and you would never have in a million years picked them. Like if you would have told me in 2000,
I knew you were going to go to the
Jimmy Conrad
well,
would be going to a 2006 World Cup and playing and starting. And I don't even think he started in 2002 for us with the earthquake. So it was really crazy. He might have played a few games at right back, but it was just one of those things that, it's just crazy to see. But, like him, the seed was planted, and, that's going to happen. Guys are going to hit hot streaks. Think a guy like Herculez Gomez, had a really good 3-4 months right before the World Cup, got to play, and sure enough, I mean, he was there as well. So it can happen for guys. It's a lot of timing. It's a lot of luck. And of course, injuries take their part as well.
Matt Turner, one of the best stories in recent memory of U.S. soccer, just for, who had him starting for us in the World Cup a couple years ago, right? Like nobody.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, I think it's a great story. I was not aware of just the number one, not top 10 he had in Sports Center with the goal in college. So,
he almost quit.
Yeah, I mean, and it just goes to show you, when people kind of get into their rhythm, they get into the right environment, they get the right feedback. Anything's possible, and that's why people write books about it and encourage coaches to do it and create environments and development where things like that can happen. So full credit to him. He's now living in London and living a dream, and he got to play in 4 big World Cup games. And if you're looking 4 years ahead, I don't see why his name isn't at least a favorite at this point.
Let's switch gears from World Cup and U.S. national team and talk a little bit about what's happening at the time of this recording, the MLS draft. What is the role of the MLS draft at this point, Joe? I mean, I look at what the Earthquakes have drafted in recent years, and I look at a guy like Jackson Ewell, who developed into a very nice talent and has been a regular on the United States men's national team. Maybe he isn't the prime U.S. level, but he's good enough to be a consistent player on the team. He was unfortunately used out of position at the start of this last season and played as a center back of sorts. And I think that it was a little bit odd for him, and he was running around a lot for the last couple of years, but he developed into a nice player. And I look at Tanner Beeson coming out of Stanford. He has been able to be a great piece for the Earthquakes back line. He came in, he was very good at Stanford, obviously, but I don't think he was expected to play as much as he has over the past 3 years, and he's done his job admirably. You look at guys like a Jack Scahan, for instance, who I think there's still development that can go on there. But how do you view players coming out of the MLS Super Draft now? Like, what is their role, and can you still hope to find a diamond in the rough, or are those players at this point all going into the academy systems prior to that?
Yeah, it's a good question. As someone who I feel really developed late, I do think you can get a diamond in the rough. I've met a lot of these young players. I get to go to the MLS Rookie Symposium every year and be a mentor to a group of them, and I'll meet whoever the Earthquakes draft, they'll be in my group, and I'll get the chance to kind of get to know them. And Nico Shakiris was in there in the past, even though he's a homegrown and not a draft. But to your point, I really think this draft depends on who you are. If you're an LAFC, you're probably looking at this draft a lot differently than if you're the San Jose Earthquakes. I think, for us and here in San Jose, it's definitely an opportunity to find diamonds in the rough. I do think, Chris Leach and the technical staff with Bruno, and they value the college game, and they certainly want to see the development of their own homegrowns that have gone to college, and to see them kind of progress and mature, in those games. It's college it's a difficult level now. It's turning more international each year.
Hmm.
You're seeing an influx of foreign players mixed in now with this transfer portal that allows a lot more freedom of players to move. So you're getting this huge kind of shuffle almost annually. And I think, the one thing I'll say is I think there can be a lot of maturation done at that age in between 18 to 22. I think the academy system, it almost makes it harder to find these players because
Hmm.
you've developed so much resources and time to certain players that, almost get a confirmation bias when they see it. But like you've mentioned, a few players that have added minutes and quality, games to the Earthquakes. Jackson Ewell is, if you were to ask me 2 years ago, he's right there in the World Cup conversation. And, I don't know if he thinks he was out of position. I don't know if he's gone on record yet, but I think you and I can definitely attest to that's probably not where we would put him. I think he's a wonderful young man, and I think it was a great draft pick, and it's given the Earthquakes a guy that they can put in the midfield for, what now, almost half a decade. So I think, those are the types of pieces, if you can find, you're really helping yourselves out because you're taking a little weight off the scouting, off the data and analytics, and you're finding a niche. And you have to do your homework though, because these players, there's a whole bunch that goes into it, and who's to say luck is not one of those things. Even a guy like Luchi Gonzalez, the head coach, will tell you, it's part timing as well in terms of where you're at. And I know Lucci was a great player when he came to us
Yeah.
with San Jose, and having that success at the college level doesn't necessarily translate. So there's a bit of work to be done. I think what you are seeing though is definitely kind of a focus on the physicality and the speed of college players that come out. So you'll see more wingers, maybe some defenders, because that tends to be the less kind of skilled, the more straightforward. I think some teams have almost pride themselves on having almost US just straight defenders that not too pretty. And I think the international game, you get a little bit more, I don't want to say skill on the ball because now everyone's building out, but I definitely think a little bit more pedigree at a younger age. But
Hmm.
for the Earthquakes, yeah, I think it's it's a normal. I think this is a big day for them, especially because of how they've placed themselves in the standings. They'll get a higher look, and it seems to me, these can really be big impact makers.
Luchi Gonzalez is expected to be a big impact player for or not player, but character for the coach, for the team this year. I'll put it that way. Does
Yeah.
Luchi's World Cup experience now, does that tangibly make him a better coach, or is it just one more area of experience that he has to pull from when he is making big time decisions, subs, running a play on a set piece? And how does that impact him as a coach now?
I don't. I think you kind of answered your own question. I think because if you think that experience is tangible, then yes, by all means, it does make them. I think all experiences, good, bad, failure, success, make you better. Especially a guy like Lucci who has taken his craft and he just wants to get better. And one of the things we talked about at the end of last year before he went off to the World Cup was all the great things he's learning from Greg Berhalter, and
Mhm.
not just on the field tactical stuff, but leadership things that has helped him think about things in a different way. So to answer your question, absolutely, I think having that experience, I think to draw upon, that's just a great tool to have in your shed when you're talking to a player about, hey, this is something that we spoke to Weston McKennie about, or Tyler Adams, or even talking to other coaches at the World Cup. I mean, you pick up nuances. So absolutely, does it make him a better coach? I would say yes, but only Lucci would know if it makes him a better coach. I just think it makes him more experienced, and a guy, like Lucci, I think turns those experiences, and it does make him better.
Do we expect to see similarities between Lucci's style and the national team? I mean, I know that he was doing his own thing in Dallas, but that was at a different point in his career. And now he's spent this time and, like you alluded to, learned from a Greg Berhalter. So does do we see the influences of a Berhalter on the Earthquakes, or do you think that Lucci uses those influences in his own system? Or it's always interesting to see where a coach's path takes them, because we have seen this in not just soccer, but every sport. The guys get experience and their own tactics and systems change. You know, what they were a couple years ago doesn't necessarily dictate what they're going to be this year.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember, Lucci came in with three in the back in Dallas, that year in their first game, and I think Cade Cowell had a couple goals or a goal and assist that game. And
Yeah, Cade Cowell, the
I
three in the
think,
back against DC and Dallas. That was a lesson well learned by the rest of the league.
as terms of tactics and formation, I have no clue. I think Lucci is, for me, I think he's dealing with a lot of fronts right now, and I think one of them is just trying to manage not just the team but the organization itself, and trying to help them and their academy and everyone get to that next level. He's obviously seen how it's done in an FC Dallas academy system that was able to produce literally talent after talent after talent after talent. I think having his experience there, drawing upon the blueprint that he has, is going to be important, not just to the first team, but to the organization as well, as we try to develop our own homegrowns here in Northern California. In terms of like tactics, I definitely think you'll see some stuff that he'll take away from the national team. I wouldn't be surprised if we do a 4-3-3 similar. I think
Mhm.
the bigger thing for Lucci, though, is really just trying to create what was Matias Almeida's team into his team. As we all know, Matias Almeida is a huge character, huge personality, and I'm interested to see how Lucci does that. And I'm rooting for him. He's just a really good human being. He has a wonderful family, and I think, for me, I think he thinks a lot about the game. I don't think he's going to be someone that's going to change his convictions overnight. I think he thinks a lot deep about what he wants in the game, about how he views it. He tries to get input, but he does have his own convictions, and I'm excited to see where he takes the team with those.
You ready for our 10th year together in the booth, man?
I don't know. It's funny. I think you are literally a couple months after my wife. We got married in 2013. I can't believe it's been 10 years already. So I'm excited. I think, Ted, you've come along, and I'm sure we both have gotten so much better year after year, but I just think you've now really come into your own, and it's great just calling the games with you. I think for me, it's a pleasure watching the team play. I think I'm grateful that my kids get to come to these games and
Yeah.
kind of see a side of me that I don't share with them enough. I think, if it wasn't for these Earthquake games, I'm not sure if the kids know I'd even had played for them. I think, but being a part of the organization and working with you is definitely one of the bright spots I have for every new year. And 10 years, I don't know. Do we have to get each other a gift or something?
I think
What's
the
protocol
gift is
here?
the wrinkles, because I remember this when we
That
start.
says
I
the
would say
guy
I
wearing
lost my hair,
makeup,
but I was already
trying to
there
get
when we started.
TV.
But
Yeah,
here's how we know it's been a while. When we
yeah. You
started
look like
doing
Lionel
this,
Messi right now.
yeah, when we started doing this, your firstborn was 2 months old, and mine was about 6 months old, and now they're both going to be going on 10 here soon. So that's terrifying in and of itself.
Yeah, I think we definitely could probably do a side by side photo collage, but I don't think anyone would really want to see it. I think, for me, I hope these next 10 years just bring a little bit more success. It's been a challenging ride. We've gone from Buckshaw to see the opening of Avaya Stadium. I think for us, that was really the exciting, pivotal, pivotal turn of the organization, to go from maybe MLS 2.0 to MLS 3.0. And you
Mhm.
can argue now that, there needs to be another shift, but I'm excited to get in the fray with you. I think it's important that we provide quality analysis to what's going on with the team, ask questions when needed, but also really support the organization and try to give our fans, a good spin, and really a positive voice and really something optimistic to look to game in and game out. And I think you've done that. So
Likewise, Joe, it's always a pleasure. And I know that we're looking forward to the start of a new season, which is just over 2 months away, man. With the schedules out, it
crazy.
starts February 25th in Atlanta. So it is upon us, and we're going to be at PayPal Park soon calling the home opener. So it's getting there, Joe. But I've stolen too much of your time. Thank you as always. And I will hopefully see you at Media Day at PayPal in a couple of weeks. All right.
That'd be great. And it's never a stolen thing if I want to give. So, just happy to be here with you. Excited. I can't believe MLS is playing games in February now. So I guess it's just about a matter of time before it goes to January. So, but have a wonderful holiday with the Ramey family and looking forward to seeing you in the new year, and go Earthquakes.